All
we
right.
can already start with a little introduction about Logica. Harry, if you want to share
Yeah.
what we do here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So, all right. So Logica is a law firm that's been around for a decade, and we have a great team of law professionals so far, about 40 team members. And our law firm really did start cutting its teeth in the area of H-1B and permanent labor certification. And as a result, we've been highly successful in this area and well known across the United States for H-1B. And Sara is leading the H-1B department, and that's why it's really important that they should be here, so you can hear from the person who's practicing day to day on this matter. But yeah, really happy to do this presentation.
Thank you so much, and yes, thank you all for attending this meeting. So, first thing first, what is the H-1B visa?
Okay, so Sara, I guess I'll answer the question. What is the H-1B visa? The H-1B visa is a non-immigrant employment visa designed to allow American employers to get the best professionals from across the world to work for their American company. And the H-1B visa is good for at least 3 years, with the option to be able to extend it for an additional 3 more years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Next question will be, who can apply for an H-1B visa? I think
who can apply? Who can apply, Sara?
So any US employer in the US actually can sponsor any worker in the US for a specialty occupation. It has to be a specialty occupation, meaning that it has to be a job that requires at least a bachelor degree in a specific field, and the applicant has to get a bachelor degree or its equivalent. It can be work experience. So as long as you have the equivalent of a bachelor degree in this specific field, you can apply for H-1B visa. And you also, of course, need the job offer from the US employer.
Awesome. So then maybe let's discuss the question, because we get calls from very highly educated people from India many times, and they say, can I apply for my H-1B? And they find themselves without a job offer. So what happens there, Sara?
Yes, one of the main criteria for this H-1B visa is to have a job offer, have an employer relationship. So you cannot be the owner of the company. You need to have somebody in the US willing and able to sponsor you and to pay you a minimum wage depending on the job. So the first thing is to find an employer in the US, and as soon as you have a job offer, you can reach out to us.
Yeah, really important. So in order for you to even qualify for the H-1B, you need to have that job offer from the United States. You can't say, I'm going to apply for myself. You can be, it is the American employer who has the rights and the power to apply for you. And they're applying for themselves because they want you to work for them. Sara, and there's another visa called the H-1B1. Who is eligible for the H-1B1 and what are the requirements?
Yes, so who is eligible? Any citizen of Chile or Singapore can be eligible for an H-1B1 visa. This H-1B1 visa also has a cap, but the good thing is that this cap is never reached. So we can apply all over the year. You don't have to go to the lottery. The first people who apply during the year have almost 100% chance of having their case selected and processed by USCIS. It is really open to anybody from Chile and Singapore. And of course, it has to meet the same requirement as the H-1B, meaning that you need a job offer in the US, a US employer, and you need to have a bachelor degree or its equivalent.
All right, so that's related to our next question, which is deadlines for an H-1B visa. So maybe, Sara,
yes.
compare what the deadlines are for the H-1B versus H-1B1. So H-1B1, we know that it's for people from the country of Chile and Singapore, and that essentially they can apply any time of the year. So
exactly.
So how does that compare to H-1B?
H-1B, we have a lottery that occurs every year at the same time. March 1st, we start the registration process. Most of the time, the deadline to apply to the lottery is around March 18. We are waiting for USCIS to confirm those dates, but it has been the same for the last 3 years. I think I can give you the timeline for the last year was March 1st. Registration starts. It opens at noon. March 18, the registration period closes. So we need to make sure that you are enrolled in this lottery. Otherwise, you won't be able to qualify for this H-1B cap for fiscal year 2024. And then after the lottery, once we got notification that you are selected, most likely by the end of March, like every year, we can start working on the H-1B petition itself. And we have until the end of June to file the H-1B petition. The start of the job has to be October 1st for H-1B, as compared to H-1B1, where it can be anytime.
So to summarize, the first deadline to keep in mind is that the employer needs to register register their candidate in the lottery by March. And do we know the date exactly? The exact date at this point?
It hasn't been confirmed, but for the last 3 years, we started registration March 1st, and USCIS closed them March 18th. So we highly recommend to file those registration early in March, the first week, because we never know. It's online. We may have some technical issues. The website can be just like frozen for a couple of hours, depending on how many applicants. So we recommend getting ready way before March 1st. So in March, we just submit.
Cool. Yes, that's a good point. So as attorneys, we need to start preparing our clients anyhow ahead of time. It's not like you just all of a sudden log into the lottery and say, okay, I'm in. So you want to hire your attorney early in time, even November, December now, so that we know that we need to register the candidate in the lottery in March. I think typically March 31st or sooner, we know who's been selected. And then once we're selected on March 31st, then, as you said, I think June 30th, we need to file the application. And what's interesting is that getting selected in the lottery is merely an invitation to apply, right, Sarah?
Exactly.
So it doesn't mean it's guaranteed. So then, so that means that by June 30th, your attorney has had to demonstrate that you merit this H-1B visa. So we have to file it by June 30th, and then we wait for an approval. And then when do people start again? October 1st, right, Sarah?
Exactly. They can remain in the US if they are in status and we file an application to change status. They can stay in the US even if their status expires before October 1st, but they will have the right to work under the H-1B visa starting October 1st.
Okay. Oh, so that would be good for students, for example, if you're an OPT.
Exactly. And it's really good for students, actually, because they can have the OPT cap extension, which means that they may have the right to continue working even if their OPT expired until October 1st. So that's really great to file this H-1B before waiting for the OPT to expire. And again, just make sure that we collect all the information and you hire your attorney way ahead of time and you don't wait for those deadlines.
Okay, great. You want to take on the next question?
Yes. So H-1B lottery and registration process, I think we mentioned the data, or do you want to talk about the data for maybe how many registrations we have?
Yeah. So here I would call it statistics regarding amount of registrations that there have been. Well, everyone should know that there's 85,000 H-1B visas available per year. 85,000 of the first 20,000 will be reserved to those who have a U.S. master's degree or advanced degree. So a U.S. master's, a U.S. law degree, a U.S. Medical degree, anything that is advanced beyond bachelor's, but from United States, not from Canada, not from India, not from, say, England. It has to be from the U.S. They can register for the master's cap. That means they'll qualify to be among the first 20,000 visas. If they have a degree from that is just a bachelor's in the United States, or it's a degree from another country, say a PhD from Cambridge, for example, England, that will be considered a regular cap application under the bachelor's. So they'll be among the 65,000 bachelors available. So the United States really rewards those who get advanced degrees in the United States by having 20,000 set aside for them. Now, this in mind, that there's only 85,000 total available per year, we have to keep in mind as to how many people have applied. So last year, Sarah, I think you have the same information that I have. I'm sorry, not last year, this year, fiscal year 2023, there were 483,927,000. So essentially 484,000 applicants in the lottery. So, and among 85,000, that means that your chances, drop substantially, especially if you don't have a master's degree. In the fiscal year 2022, which is the year before, there were 308,000. The year before that, fiscal year 2021, there were 275,000. Fiscal year 2020, there were 201,000. Fiscal year 2019, there were 190,000. So in fiscal year 2019, you had about a 50-50 chance of getting selected. Now it's like about 20% chance, and your chances increase if you have that master's degree. So what does that mean? Knowing that there's overabundance, for those who are in the United States right now getting their degrees, they should have a two-pronged approach. Plan on registering for the lottery, but if you're in the United States, consider doing the permanent labor certification in tandem with the H-1B. So, because if you're an OPT or CPT, that you may have a year or 2 years or so where you can remain here, and in that time frame, you might be able to get the employment-based green card as opposed to getting the H-1B. So I would say do both. Register for the H-1B and also do the permanent labor certification.
Thank you, Harry. Very, very informative response.
Yeah.
Next question will be, what are the requirements to receive an H-1B visa?
Well, these are the general requirements. We touched on them earlier. You have to have at least a U.S. equivalent of a bachelor's degree, basic. You need to have a bona fide job offer in the United States, meaning you have a company that is able to pay your salary. They should have they typically should have an office to work unless you're working remotely, but we highly recommend that the office have an actual location. Those are stronger cases. And the job offer, that there's a real job offer available. So again, a U.S. bachelor's equivalent, you have a job offer and a place to work. So Sarah, another question we get often, which is, it's many times that the candidate will call and say, hey, my employer is interested. What documents does my employer need to register me for the lottery or for an H-1B application? So what basic things should the employer start preparing for to gather?
Okay, so yes, for the first step, which is the registration into the lottery, we don't add that many documents. We just want to double check information about the company. So we need corporate documents or a document from the IRS showing the federal employer identification number, the FAN. It's very important because this information has to be correct and consistent until you get your H-1B approved. So we always ask for these documents. We also ask a document from the candidate, actually the passport. We need to check your identity and have your passport number and make sure that you are from the country you said you're from. So those are the two main documents we ask for the lottery, but in the meantime, we get ready in case you get selected and we ask for more. For filing the H-1B, we need more documents. As Harry mentioned, we need to show that the candidate has a bachelor degree or its equivalent. So we need copy of the degree, transcripts. If you don't have a US bachelor degree, we need to get the equivalence from an expert accredited to deliver that kind of equivalency. We need to show, if you're in the US, that you are in status, any immigrant documents, copy of your passport. From the company, which is the most important, we need the job offer and we need information about the job, a really good, great detailed job description. Most of the time we advise you and guide you, but we need that from the employer. We need also to show that the company is operating, so any marketing materials is helpful, websites, brochures. We need financial documents showing that the company has the ability to pay the minimum wage, tax returns or bank statements. It's not like your hard requirements. Some companies are new and starting, so we understand that not all the companies have taxes filed already, but the more document, the better. And we will just work with you and advise you on a case-by-case basis. But those are the main documents that we need for an H-1B case to be approved.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I know. I think there's a couple of questions from the from those watching here, and I think we'll get to them in just a moment. But just know that we will answer your questions. The next question is, who is allowed to accompany an H-1B visa holder when they relocate to the U.S.?
Okay, so we call them dependent, and they are spouses and children under the age of 21. They can just come with the H-1B holder with the H-4 visa. We need to file a separate application for their own status. If they are in the US, we can apply from here and just ask for a change of status to H-4. And if they are at the embassy, they can just join the visa holder, the H-1B visa holder, and prove that they have a relationship by bringing marriage certificate or birth certificate showing that they are family members and they are under 21 if they are children.
So spouses and children can accompany, and children as long as they're under 21. And
Exactly.
what visa? I think you mentioned it, but what visa is it that they get?
They get the H-4 visas.
The H-4 visa, so H-4 dependent.
Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
awesome. What happens if the visa holder? I'm sorry. How long does an H-1B visa last for? Is it renewable, Sarah?
Yes, I think you mentioned it at the beginning, but the visa is for 3 years and you can renew it for another 3 years. So you can have an H-1B for at least 6 years, which is a very long time as compared to other type of visas. And also, if your employer decides to sponsor you for a green card, the good thing is that you can extend the H-1B indefinitely until the green card is available for you. So 3 years to start, and you can renew and extend.
Okay, you can extend for 3 more years, and if you have the I-140 approved through the permanent labor certification, you can extend indefinitely. And that's going to be most important for candidates that are Indian nationals, and sometimes those for China. But if you're an Indian national and you have an H-1B, your goal is to get the permanent labor certification filed, because the H-1B will get you 6 years. But due to the delays in the amount of visas available to people from India, you may be waiting 12 years for a green card. So once you have the I-140 approved through the permanent labor certification, you can extend way beyond the 6 years with no specific limit until green card becomes available. So again, it used to apply more often to Chinese and Indian, but now it's to India even more so. So keep that in mind if you're a national from India. You want to take on the next question?
Yes. So, Harry, what happens if the visa holder resigns or if the employer terminates the position?
What happens if the visa holder resigns or the employer terminates the position? Okay, interesting. So this has happened. With a decade of work experience, we've worked with people for the longevity of their H-1B and into their permanent labor certifications. So we've seen this happen. Well, first off, if you have an H-1B, if you're lucky to have an H-1B and you quit your job, well, the world has not ended. Hopefully you have quit because you have a job offer from another American employer. So it's very important that if you're going to quit your job, that you first request the new employer to file an H-1B petition before you quit. That will allow what's called portability, where you can port or move your H-1B from your current employer to your new employer, and then you can begin working immediately, even if you don't have an approval. So that would be highly recommended. If your employer fires you, you would have then, and that could happen. Maybe you're a very intelligent person, obviously have an H-1B, well educated, but you might get fired like any other American or any person. If that happens, you have 60 days to leave the country or to find another employer to apply for H-1B. And in that case, if you're fortunate to find an employer that can file an H-1B petition on day 59 from the day you were terminated, and the petition arrives on day 60 from the day you were terminated, you may wait in the United States until the H-1B is approved, but you may not begin working. So the ideal situation is that you file an H-1B petition with another employer before you before you voluntarily quit. And if you voluntarily quit and you don't find another employer, you have to leave the United States in 60 days unless you filed another H-1B petition or some other status. But be careful not to go beyond 60 days because you may forego other rights and benefits that the immigration system would have given you. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Sara?
No, I think it was very detailed and you answered completely to the question.
Sara, what about, okay, so in the more practical terms now that we're getting closer to the lottery in March, what happens if an applicant is not selected in the lottery?
Okay, if an applicant is not selected in the lottery, nothing happened. The status is still going to show as submitted. What happens is that most of the time, USCIS runs another lottery a few months after the first one. So there is still hope of being selected around July or November. This happened 2 years ago and last year once. So there is still chances, but in the meantime, you may think about other options. And I encourage you to contact us to see if you qualify for another type of visa, maybe a H3 visa, a O visa. I don't think I will go in detail on those, but you may have other options. So it's important to stay in touch with us and see, because we can advise you and find other solutions. And of course, you can try the year after and maybe hope for more luck in the lottery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are other visas available, like the ones you mentioned, the O1 extraordinary abilities or the H3 trainee, which is possible. That being said, like I mentioned earlier, it's best if the employer and the candidate can agree to do H-1B and permanent labor certification together, because the permanent labor certification process can take approximately 18 months or more, right? And the likelihood of you being selected in the H-1B or anyone just mathematically is low because of the amount of numbers of people applying. So have a two-pronged approach is the best approach, H-1B and permanent labor certification. But hard part is that sometimes the employer is not willing to make that commitment. So it is a struggle. But other alternatives are the H3, the O1, and there might be others. And we're happy to discuss those with any candidate who wants to go into that in detail on a one-to-one basis. And Sara, why is it important to complete the H-1B process with an immigration attorney, either with a lottery or doing the petition yourself? I'm sorry, so let me repeat that question. Why is it better to work with an H-1B immigration attorney for the lottery and the petition than people going at this by themselves?
Just because this process is very important. It may seem easy to complete the registration process, but it is tricky. Some questions are really tricky, and any mistake can just cause you to get your H-1B denied. Like if the way you complete the registration is wrong, even if you are selected, you won't be able to complete your application. And you need somebody who I think had experience and went through this before, maybe hundreds of times. So we know how to make sure that you have the strongest case you can have, and we will make sure to advise you during the entire process from the beginning until receiving your approval.
Yeah, and cumulatively over the years, we've probably gone this over 1,000 times, and we've seen how the process has slight modifications every year. There's something new, so that's not something that a human resource department manager, a business owner should be worried about. Let us worry about that, because it really is. You won't know necessarily the overall details that we're looking for, the pitfalls, the mistakes that could happen, because we know what to look for. So you want to be careful about that. Highly recommend that you hire an attorney. I see a question on SM. Can we apply for multiple registrations for candidate from different employees? Example, employer A submits registration for H-1B candidate XYZ, and employer B also submits registration for H-1B for the same candidate XYZ. Is this valid? So we know this answer, and I'll summarize it in more practical terms. Can one candidate have multiple employers register him or her in the lottery?
Should I answer? Yes. Yes, it is possible, because the government admit that you can have multiple opportunities in the US. So you can have multiple job offers in the US and different employers willing to sponsor you. So that's great. You can have more chances of being selected. Anyway, we have to just make sure that those companies are not related in any way. Recently, USCIS noticed that some company were related, maybe owned by the same person, and just using different federal employer number. And some visa are being revoked because of that. So just make sure that those employers are not related in any way. And of course, you can have multiple sponsors in the US.
Okay, yeah, that's an excellent point. So, because I mean, yes, you can have multiple employers request you for the lottery. I mean, if you're a highly sought after person, that just means that, you know, that you're really good at what you do, right? But the problem is when it's a group of people who are the same owners of multiple businesses, and they try to game the system by saying, okay, well, we own these 3 companies, let's apply for this person, you know, each time, and we control all these 4 companies. That's the problem. I guess the clear example is of a good case is Google applies for lottery, H1B applies for lottery, Microsoft applies for a lottery, Accenture applies for lottery, Deloitte applies for lottery. So these are 5 major US companies that are independent, and they each apply for the same person. And yes, that's fine. The problem is when you have, you know, one small group of owners owning multiple and applying for the same person, that can be considered as gaming the system. So I see another question here, Sarah, I think 2 more. So this question by Jasmine Earl: what is the timeline process of the perm application?
That's a good question. So this process can take over 1.5 years, 2 years, depending on the processing time from the door and whether if you're in the US or abroad. The first stage, which is getting a prevailing wage certification, takes around 6 to 8 months. Then we have the next step, that is the recruitment process, that takes over 3 months on average. And the last step, that is the perm, that is around 6 to 8 months right now. Is changing, but that's the average. Once we got this perm approved, then you can just file the immigration petition. The company is filing this immigration petition, and you can simultaneously file your own green card application, that is the adjustment of status if you are here in the US, or apply abroad and go with the consular officer and attend an interview.
Okay. So at least 18 months to 24-month process.
Exactly.
And if you have a work visa like an H1B, or you're working on optional practical training, it doesn't matter that you're in this process. You just have to wait for it to complete, and you can continue working on H1B and OPT. But if you don't have some work authorization, you have to wait until you get this green card approved.
Yeah, we recommend starting the perm as soon as possible as well.
As soon as possible, definitely. Question from the audience: hi, after I come in the US in visitor visa, then I take work visa. So I think what he's trying to say is, or he or she is saying that if I enter the United States with a visitor visa, a B2 tourist visa essentially, can I then take a job?
So first, when you enter, you should have the intent as to visit the country as a visitor. So your intent has to be a tourist. Then of course the government understands that your intent can change. So later on you can apply for a change of status if you have a job offer. Now if you're doing the H1B cap, it can be very tricky because the lottery doesn't affect your status, since the job is supposed to start October 1st. So you need to make sure that you are maintaining your status during the entire period until October 1st. So it's very tricky. I think it's again on a case-by-case basis. I don't know how to answer this question without saying something that.
Yeah. It's tricky. We can make some assumptions. We can assume that if a person comes to the United States as a visitor, first off, you're telling the United States government that your intention is to be a visitor and to return home after the 6-month stay. So you cannot come in with the intention of wanting to take a job. Second, jobs are not readily available. You have to you have to get a job through an employer first. So if you haven't found an employer who requests you to stay, it's going to be very hard and tricky unless you get a student visa. So I would say reach out to us because this question can be very complex, but the general answer is no. You cannot come as a tourist and apply for a job. That would be illegal and you'd be breaking the rules. But there are nuances. And then I think the last question here, question from Diego. Sara, I think I'll give this to you. Hello, I'm doing an MBA in SIU in Miami. So a local person here in Miami. Congratulations on doing your MBA, Diego. I will finish it December next year, but I would like to start my process for the H-1B. Once I have the job offer for the employer, I contact you and start the process, correct? All right? It sounds like an ideal case.
Sounds like a perfect plan to me. So yes, Diego, I think you're super right. The earlier the better. We can register you to the lottery and start now gathering the information. And it's even better for you, so you don't have to worry about anything after graduation. You have your job, you have your work permit, and you can also think about the permit at the same time. So yes, that's a perfect plan.
Yeah, that's right. I do recommend that. If he's ready, definitely do the have that plan to do the permanent labor certification and the H-1B. You have an MBA, that means you're gonna be among the first 20,000 to have a chance at getting selected. But there's gonna be like 500,000 applicants, so you have to prepare just in case. But yes, absolutely. Once you have the job offer from the employer, call us. I'm gonna put a little link here where you can book a call with us. And we can talk to you, Diego. It'd be a pleasure to speak to you. All right, so it looks like the host is saying goodbye and thank you. So Sara, thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing your information, and to those who are watching, I hope this is very helpful. We'll try to put this online as well, so you can guys go back and review this.
Thank you, Harry, and thank you, the audience, for attending. Thank you for your questions, great questions, and we're looking forward to get in touch with you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.